Chapter 14, Waiting for a Bus. They couldn't find the teepee. If you'd asked Evan yesterday, he would have said, I can find that teepee blindfolded. But here they were, as good as blindfolded, because of the darkness, and Evan had no idea where to look. He and Jesse wandered through the woods, flashing their lights in every direction, but either they'd gone too far or not far enough, because the teepee wasn't there. What if they couldn't find it in the dark? Evan knew his grandmother wouldn't survive a night out in the cold like this, even if the police managed to get together a search party soon. And Evan hadn't seen a single flashlight or heard any voices in the woods yet. It might be too late by the time they find her. His grandma was old and she had a broken wrist. She got confused. She needed help. He started walking faster, but he had no idea if he was getting closer to the teepee or farther away. Stop, said Jesse. We need a system. We can't just keep walking around, hoping we're going to find it. So they followed their tracks back to the bell and stared at the edge of the woods they had just come out of. Where's the lightning tree? Asked Evan. They swept their flashlight beams back and forth, but they couldn't see through the thick falling snow. So they split up, each staring at one edge of the woods and working their way to the middle, checking each tree that they came to. Finally, Evan said, I found it, and he had. Up close, the tree was unmistakable, burned black and naked without any branches except this single stubby one. The branch pointed their way into the woods, and they plunged deeper and deeper in. Evan kept telling himself, we're getting closer, we're getting closer. But it seemed to him that they were taking way too long to find Grandma. There it is, said Jesse, pointing with their flashlight through the trees. And there it was, just where it had always been, the teepee they'd built the summer before last, the teepee that was strong enough to survive 100 winters. Evan broke into an awkward run, his snowshoes flopping and slapping the ground. When he reached the opening, he stopped, suddenly afraid to see what was inside. Jesse caught up behind him, looked at him, then reached out to pull back the tarp. No, said Evan, grabbing her hand and pulling it back. He didn't know what they would find inside. But if it was bad, he didn't want Jesse seeing it first. He took a step forward to see that his body blocked Jesse's view. Then he slowly pulled back the top edge of the tarp, just enough for him to poke his flashlight inside and peer into the circle of light. There was Grandma, sitting on the ground, cross-legged. His eyes blinked like an owl's her eyes blinked like an owl's caught in an unexpected light. How long had she been sitting like that? Hi, said Evan, afraid to call her Grandma in case that spooked her. It felt to him as though she were standing on the edge of a cliff and any sudden movement could topple her over. He noticed her hat was crooked and Jesse's scarf dangled from one shoulder. Is the bus here? Asked Grandma. I've been waiting for hours. Grandma, shouted Jesse from behind Evan. Suddenly he felt Jesse shoving his body out of the way, sliding past him and into the teepee. He wanted to grab her and keep her back, but he was holding the flashlight and the tarp, and she slipped by before he could stop her. Why are you here, Grandma? Jesse was practically shouting, or at least it seemed that way to Evan. Why didn't you come home? Grandma looked bewildered. I'm waiting for the bus. It's been hours. What's the delay? What are you talking about, Grandma? There's no bus. No bus. What do you mean? Of course there's a bus. I take this bus 3 times a week. Grandma, said Jessie, sounding like she was about to cry. Stop it. Stop pretending. It isn't funny. Grandma gave Jessie a disappointing stare. Who are you? Why are you yelling at me? Where's the bus? Evan, yelled Jessie, and now she was crying. Evan could see the first few tears pulling up in her eyes, and he knew if she really got going, there would be no stopping her. She hardly ever cried, but when she did, it was a thunderstorm. Jess, it's okay, said Evan, pulling on her arm. She tried to shake her arm free, but he got a good, firm hold of her. Come on, come out here. She let him pull her out of the teepee, where they stood side by side in the falling snow. She's tired, he said, and she's old. This is how it is now. We have to get used to it. No, 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 said Jessie, shaking her head. I won't get used to it. I'll never get used to it. She doesn't even know me. Yeah, she does, said Evan. Somewhere in her brain, she knows exactly who you are. She just can't reach it right now. It's like my bedroom at Grandma's house. It's still there. We just can't get to it for a while. It's off limits. But she'll remember you again when she's not so cold and tired. I hate this, whispered Jessie. He bent his head closer to hers. I know, but look, we've got to get her home. Can you get in there and talk to her? Get her to come out? Jessie shook her head. I can't. Okay, said Evan. It's okay. You don't have to. I'll go in. Just try to keep quiet, okay? Because I think, we're scaring her. Jessie clamped her mouth shut and nodded her head yes. Evan stood for a minute outside the teepee thinking. Then he undid the buckles on his snowshoes and stepped out of them, pulled back the tarp, and ducked inside. 2 summers ago, when they first built the teepee, Evan could stand inside at the tallest spot, but now his head butted up against the sloping branches that leaned against the center tree pole. He started to lean over, then realized it would be easier just to kneel on the ground. This brought him eye to eye with Grandma, and one look at her face told him she was scared. Ma'am, he said, are you waiting for the bus? Yes, she said. I've been waiting for hours. She looked so relieved then, almost happy, that Evan wished more than anything he could make a bus appear right here in the middle of the woods. It isn't coming, he said. There's been a problem, a flat tire. The bus can't make it here today. Well, send another, said Grandma. That's ridiculous. There's a bus every hour on the route. I've been taking this bus for years. I know the schedule. All the buses are broken, said Evan. I'm sorry. That's inexcusable, said Grandma. I'm going to write a letter. The hand on her good arm started to pluck at her coat. Yes, you should, said Evan. But right now, we have to get you home. Wait a minute. Who are you? She asked suddenly. I work for the bus company. They told me to tell you that the bus isn't coming and that I should take you home. I've been waiting for hours. I know, said Evan. It's awful. You should write a letter. I'm going to. All the time they were taken, Evan slowly moved closer to Grandma. When he rested a hand on her arm, she didn't back away. And when he helped her to her feet, she leaned on his shoulder and went along. There's another passenger outside, said Evan. She's been waiting for hours too. Do you mind if she walks with us? Inexcusable. You can't expect people to wait for hours. People to depend on the bus. And what happened to the bench? Who took the bench? Evan ushered Grandma outside the teepee and nodded to Jessie, who had taken several steps back. Kids probably, said Evan. Kids do some really stupid things these days. He put her arm over his shoulder and his hand on her back, and then shone his flashlight on the snow ahead of them. Jessie walked right behind, but Grandma never once turned around to look at her. Evan kept talking. Grandma seemed to think she was young again in the days when she rode the bus 3 times a week to her classes at the community college. Every once in a while, she would stop walking and ask Evan, "Who are you again?" And Evan would remind her that he was the bus company, and it was his job to escort her home. Once she said, "I can't go home. I have to get to class." But Evan told her that all the classes were canceled because of the snow. Grandma said she thought that was ridiculous, but she kept on walking. When they reached the house, Evan could see his mother's car and Pete's truck parked out front. He suddenly felt so tired. He wanted to stop right where he was and lie down in the snow. Grandma, however, seemed to perk up when she saw the house in front of her. "Thank you," she said, taking her arm off his shoulder and patting the front of his ski coat. "It was nice of you to walk me home, but you can go now," and she turned to go into the house. Evan watched her walk up the stairs, knock the snow off her boots, and push open the front door. He could tell she knew exactly where she was. She was home. "Evan," said Jessie, "is she okay?" "Sure," said Evan. "Look at her. She's fine." He paused for a second. "She's just different than she was. Really different." Evan shrugged. "Not all that different. Still Grandma." He took a few steps toward the house and turned around. Jessie wasn't following. "Come on, let's go inside." "No," said Jessie. "I need to go see Maxwell." The picture came into Evan's mind of Maxwell running like a wild animal, screaming as he went. It seemed to Evan as if there were an endless number of people to worry about. "You have to come inside first. Mom has to see you to make sure you're okay." Jessie nodded. Evan waved his arm toward the house. "Come on, I'll walk you over to Maxwell's later."